Hello, I'm Natalie from the Early Years Alliance, and today I'm here to explore with you the benefits and some of the potential negative effects of children engaging with electronic devices to access electronic media. Electronic devices and technology are part of daily life, and babies and young children are surrounded by technology from the earliest days. Through observing adults around them using tablets, mobile phones, televisions, and exploring all of those technological advances that we have available to us. And tech does offer children lots of opportunities to discover new things and to learn about the world around them, especially when the adult gets involved in that process with them. So that's when they're going to get the most benefit and learn the most. Now, it's widely accepted that the use of technology complements rather than replaces the learning and skills developed through face-to-face interaction and creative play. So it's really important to think of it in that way, that it's something extra, something additional that we can provide children with to complement and support the learning that's already taking place through the most important work that children do, through their play and through those really important positive interactions that they have with their main caregivers. An important rule to consider when thinking about technology is the rule of not too much and mostly together. Now, the not too much does apply to us as adults as well. And it's important that we show our children that we are following that rule ourselves, because children very much learn from what we do more than what we say. So it's important to put your own devices down, have that one-to-one interaction with your children, because if they see that we are continuously engaging with devices such as mobile phones and tablets, they're going to think that that is the way that the day is structured. And then it's going to be quite difficult if we then try and limit the amount of time that they're allowed to be on their electronic devices. So very much modelling that behaviour for them, showing them that there's a time and place for this technology in our lives, but it shouldn't be a sort of continuous provision throughout the day. It's got a time and it's got a place. There's a lot of research ongoing into the effects of screen time on young children and whether there are some negative effects as well as those benefits. And some of this research suggests that too much screen time leads to obesity, irregular sleep habits and attention problems. But although there's lots of research, there's not really a general agreement on what actually is too much. So it's really down to us as parents and carers to make that judgment, make that assessment, and follow lots of other guidance that can help us to make that decision. One that I think is particularly useful is that the NHS provides guidance that children between the ages of 1 and 4 should engage in 180 minutes, so 3 hours of physical activity every day. Now that can be broken up into smaller chunks throughout the day and combinations of playing indoors and outdoors, climbing, running, jumping, dancing, all of that physical activity that children naturally want to engage in. They should be doing that for around 3 hours a day. I think that's quite a useful number to think about in terms of the screen time complementing their other learning and play. And if we're saying that children need at least 3 hours a day being physical, you can see straight away that a child that was having an excessive amount of screen time straight away might not get that 3 hours of physical activity. And therefore it's taking away from rather than complementing. So maybe thinking about the other things that your child needs in their day. Once you know that they're achieving that, so they're getting that playtime, they're getting that physical activity, they're getting those important interactions with the adults around them, if there is then some time left in the day to have a little bit of allotted time for screen time, then that's okay, as long as it's not taken away from those other things that they need to be getting. So it's thinking about making limits, managing expectations, and not thinking of the use of screens as something that's continuous throughout the day, but actually earmarking it as a particular time. Think of it as an activity that you're going to structure into your day. There's also a lot of research to suggest that loud and continuous noise in the home can make it difficult for young children and babies to hear individual sounds and voices. And if they can't hear those individual sounds and voices, then they can't process those and imitate those, which is the start of their early speech. So it's really key for their language and communication skills that they have some quiet time in the home. And if there is, for example, a television on in the background all day, that can actually hamper their language and communication and their development of their speech. So again, making it an allotted time rather than something that's continuous. Instead of having children's programs playing in the background whilst your child is playing with their toys, making it a separate thing, because having it on in the background is really going to distract them from their creative play and from that learning that takes place through their play. Their best learning is done when they're playing. So let's separate the two, making it something that complements the learning rather than taking away from it. So I'm just going to run through a few ideas of ways that you can use screen time as that enhancement, as that complement to their learning in a positive way, making sure that we're being mindful of some of those negative effects that it can possibly have if we don't manage it in the right way. The first thing that I'd like to suggest as part of your screen time that you could have with your young child would be some of the videos that we've got here available on the Early Years Alliance YouTube channel. So we've got some activity sessions and some rhyme time sessions available. And they're designed in such a way that they are interactive for the child with the adult present, something that you can sit down and do together so that learning is going to take place. It's that lovely bonding experience, but actually you're being supported as a parent with the use of something based through electronic media. It's there to help you, it's there to provide that activity for your child through the use of screen time, but it's also going to be something that's engaging and interactive. So have a little look at what's on offer there. That might be something that you want to schedule into your daily use of electronic devices. Another really great thing that you can do is to sit and watch a short children's cartoon television programme, or perhaps a storytelling opportunity. And again, there are lots on platforms like YouTube where it will be a story that you can hear and watch together. A lot of the kind of familiar and traditional ones are available there as well, the stories that we all know and love. And then what you can do is you can watch that together, and then afterwards make that the topic of a conversation with your child. So with your toddler or preschool age child, you could sit with your child and try and remember that story together. So you might say, can you remember how many pigs were there in the story that were trying to build a house? Can you remember how many they were? And what did the first pig decide that they were going to build their house with? And having that interaction with your child with those questions and giving them the opportunity to retell that story and to recall that information is really going to embed that learning for them, and it's going to help them with their own creative thinking. So the activity of watching something together, but thinking about what could you do afterwards? How could you extend that learning and that activity to last a little bit longer and have that extra interaction? Another great way of watching something together and then having an activity afterwards would be to introduce some small world play. So for lots of the popular television characters, you can actually buy the little figures. You often find that children who perhaps don't naturally engage with that small world role play, so using those little characters and making them interact and having those little imaginary voices, they find that a lot easier if they've got a starting point. And sometimes that starting point is being familiar with the character already from a television programme, that then they can do that in their play. And what is even better is if you get down with them and model that for them. So immerse yourself in that play, in that small world play, and have those little characters and show them how to make those little interactions, and maybe tell a little bit of that story from the programme that you watch together using the little characters together in play. Again, tying into using those familiar characters, you could have a go at making some homemade books using those characters, perhaps from magazines or television guides, or just printing some pictures of your child's favourite characters out and allowing them to make their own books. There's a video here on the Early Years Alliance YouTube channel about homemade books, so have a look there. I go through how to do that, how to make those books. Perhaps you could do it based on a favourite character. Again, a lovely opportunity for a creative activity that you could do with your child. Children respond really well to a little bit of freedom and being able to make some of their own choices. But of course, we need to keep our children safe, and we need to be mindful of safe practices using electronic media. A lot of the platforms that are available now, so television platforms, online streaming services, all the really well-known ones, do have the facility for you to create lists of programmes. So as a parent, you could have a look for yourself at some of those programmes that you are happy for your child to engage with, create that list for them. So actually, once they're looking at the screen, they are looking at their available list. And you can do this the same with some of the recording devices that you can use for electronic media and television. What is taking place then is the child is having the opportunity to choose from that list, but it's a limited list. So ultimately, a little bit like when we're serving food and snacks and we might put a few things in front of the child and ask them which one they would like, ultimately we're making the choice, but we're putting a little bit of ownership, a little bit of control back to the child for them to make that final decision. They're going to respond well to that because they're having that little bit of authority and freedom of their own thinking. Another great way to establish a lovely routine for your screen time is that your child is the one that turns the device off. They physically press the button on the screen or on the remote to end that time. Make it really clear when that's going to happen and maybe give them some warnings. So maybe you've got 2 more minutes left and then it's going to be time to finish, or at the end of that episode, that's going to be the end of your screen time today. I will come back to you in a minute and ask you to turn it off. So again, you're present in that process. It's not a case of popping it on and sort of leaving them to it. We're present, we're managing and monitoring that time, but when the moment comes to turn it off, we're putting that back to the child for them to take ownership of that and to end that screen time for themselves. A lot of children who perhaps aren't quite as keen on reading and perhaps don't engage with books as well, a lovely way of engaging them is actually to get some books in the home that are including those characters from their television programmes. If they see that familiarity, and you'll often find that actually books are produced that follow the same stories that are on some of the programmes that they might sort of watch on repeat, because children like to watch the same things over and over, and that's great for them learning vocabulary, actually, to see that repetition of the same episode again and again. You might find that a little bit irritating, but your child will quite enjoy that, and actually there are some benefits from that. And likewise, they often produce the books that are of the episodes, so that might be a good way of engaging your child in reading if it's something that isn't usually their first choice of activity. You're following their interests, and children learn really well when we follow their interests. And the last suggestion that I want to make for you today is using a great advancement in technology that is something that is more recent. The way that childcare settings and schools share information. So the platforms that you might have where you have an app and you log in and you get like photographs of your children when they're in their childcare setting and a little bit of information about their day. Taking some time to actually use that technology to sit down together and have a look at that, and it will be a brilliant prompt for them to talk about their day, to look at those photographs together, and you can ask them questions about what's going on in that photograph, and it allows them to process firstly the experiences that they've had when they've not been with you, but we're using technology and screens in a really meaningful and purposeful way. We're sitting down together, we're sharing that experience, and you know, we're using that wonderful resource that we have that is so useful and lovely for parents and carers to see what children have been doing in that childcare setting. Make that shared experience with your child as another part of their interaction with electronic devices, and sort of that's where they're going to learn to use them as well. Let them kind of lead that and touch the screen and move the icons around, because that's going to be a really valuable skill for them moving forward. Hopefully you've got a few suggestions there and a little bit more information that might support some of your decisions around how you use electronic devices and manage your screen time at home with your young children. If you'd like any more ideas for things that you can do at home, you can visit our website, which is www.familycorner.co.uk, and as I've already mentioned, you can have a look at the other videos that we've got here available on the Early Years Alliance YouTube channel.